to get that off the battlefield and is going to provide you with a little bit of card selection and a little bit of ramp as well. And here we go. So Jake Conan, the 3 seed, is going to be on the play with Is It Phoenix? Got to be pretty happy if you're that. Just being able to deploy the cantrip first, set up a little bit, even if you don't have a kill spell, just artist talent on the play. Just a much better card when you can kind of like untap with it before your opponent has too much going on.
All right, as expected, turn 1 mana dork for Jacob, and let's see what Jake does to interact with it here.
Got a red pathway. Presumably, we're going to be bolting the bird, or there you go. There's the artist talent. So really respecting getting that onto the battlefield. And I like that because, it's going to allow Jake to kind of sculpt his hand a lot more, find the pieces that he's missing. That's going to be Kiora here. Ooh.
Yeah,
A lot of mana here.
We had Jake in the booth for everyone who's been sticking around with us. We had him in the interview booth last round, and he told us about how we should rename the deck to Is It Talent, because it's all about this enchantment now. And you see him actually opting for it there over anything else, including, I suppose we don't know if he has removal in hand, but either way, that was the card he prioritized on turn 2.
Yeah, and now that there's 2 elves in the battlefield, Jake has a red mana here, but now needs to find a second red source and another kill spell unless there's already one in hand. Dumps a Phoenix into the graveyard, which is a good start. So if we have a third land and preferably for Jake, a kill spell here to kill the elf, get back the Phoenix. So at least a cantrip, which is going to get back the Phoenix and put Kiora to 3. Kiora's a weird card because usually you don't want to be attacking that thing, but given the situation and Jacob, kind of maybe a little bit later on mana and has the ability to maybe kill it over the course of 2 turns, I think Jake is going to want to hit the Kiora here.
Yeah, I've played against. I've been playing against the green deck a lot more so than playing with it, and Kiora is kind of the card. If you can get it right away, or if it's early enough like this, you want to try to take it down because, 2 turns from now, it basically, if it gets 1 activation on Nykthos, you're kind of cooked regardless. But you might be able to handle this Kiora before that point. And of course, getting off the battlefield, it removes 1 devotion for the Nykthos. So Jacob's going to activate it here to make mana.
And Polukranos, also a pretty important threat here for...
Thank you.
Yeah, Polukranos important for Jacob because that one does have reach. So that one can and likely will block the Phoenix if allowed. But, if Jake can find something like a Lighting Axe, can go ahead and take care of that. I will say it's a little awkward for Jake here, the mana, because we do have, we had to play the second pathway on blue to be able to cast the cantrip to get back the Phoenix. But with only 1 red source available, may not be able to deploy 2 kill spells. So we might, see a situation where Jake can only kill 1 thing, presumably would kill the Polukranos, but that'll still at least let Jacob untap with the Llanowar Elves.
Yeah, and that Polukranos, the one of in the deck, when you transform it, it's actually pretty nuts where it has reach and lifelink, which lifelink is pretty relevant as it turns out in a lot of these matchups we've seen today. And also whenever Polukranos or another non-token Hydra, I guess, dies, you get a 3/3 life 3/3 with reach and a 3/3 with lifelink. So it's kind of a Wormcoil-esque design there, and it makes it really difficult for aggressive decks or decks that want to hit you for 3 or 6 in the air at a time with a couple of Phoenixes to close the deal before your green deck is able to just completely go over the top.
Yeah, this is a really big turn here for Jake because if Jake cannot remove the Polukranos, therefore won't be able to remove the Kiora, and that Kiora is going to provide a whole bunch of mana next turn. So, really, I think looking for, okay, there you go. Floodmaw, not a permanent answer, but good enough to take care of the Kiora. And if Jacob does not have a green source in hand, may not be able to redeploy that Polukranos. And more importantly, taking care of the Kiora means a lot less mana for Jacob next turn.
Yeah, really taxed Jacob's mana very effectively to Jake this game through a series of removal spells and even bounce spells. And now, like we talked about, if you can get rid of the Kiora before it gets out of control, you want to do that. And Phoenix is able to take a few turns off of going after face to finish it off. And this is what we talked about before the match, how in that flurry of early spells, who's going to stick something? In this case, it was almost Jacob sticking that Pelucranos, but instead it was Jake getting back that one Phoenix that he was able to successfully deploy into his graveyard in those early turns. And that has been the difference now, because if Kiora was in play here, Jacob would be able to reload much faster. He'd have an additional mana off the Nykthos in the first place. And it would just be in generally a much different spot. So those early turns were decisively won by Jake Conan. And now we're seeing him reap the benefits of it, where the mono green devotion deck just can't even find enough ways to make and spend mana.
Yeah, that last turn was the big one, right? If Jake didn't find the answer for the Pelucranos, wouldn't have been able to attack with the Phoenix. Cure
Mm-hmm.
would have stayed in play, still would have had 3 devotion, would have been able to make, I can't 9 or 10 mana with Nykthos. But now, instead, there's no battlefield. Jacob has no relevant permanents in play, has 2 devotion and no additional mana. And Jake is just sort of left up to his own devices now. Has, the artist talent going. I believe I saw a cruise in Jake's hand. So can maybe try to find a second or even third copy of Phoenix here to put Jacob on a potential 2-turn clock. And yeah, it seems like Jake is kind of poised to just run away from here, because the mono green deck is extremely powerful, but it does not do very well on a battlefield like this, where you need to have a lot of stuff in play to be able to utilize Nykthos and all those kind of permanents.
Yeah. Yeah, that jolt you felt was the corner turning quite abruptly, because we have gone in a completely different direction. And this is now Jake with complete control, mono green trying to find a way back in, and it's just not going to be there in
Yeah,
all
2
likelihood,
Phoenixes
right?
too.
Like
Yep.
you're able to make a you need something that gets multiple things in play. Maybe a Cavalier would ramp and have reach, but 3 Phoenixes, that's a whole bunch of damage, and this one may be over pretty quickly here. That like we went just from one turn of will I have Kiora and Pelucranos to I have nothing at all, and I probably have no way back in this game. Really, again, well navigated by Jake over the early turns to sequence his spells in a way that allowed him to turn the corner there when he needed to.
Yeah,
And
I mean, in theory, if Jacob does get another turn, if Jake doesn't have an answer, well, that's not going to happen. I was going to say, if we don't have an answer to the Pelucranos, maybe we untap with 5 devotion, can do something with Nykthos. But yeah, there's the axe was found to clear that. And then at this point, Jake can find lethal with either the Profs or the 4th copy of Phoenix, or even the Trespass.
yeah.
We're going to go for a cruise here. Maybe can
Well,
find
and
one of
remember,
those.
Jake tapped out for that talent on turn 2.
Hmm.
And the entire game, it has just fueled him as he's discarded cards and drawn cards off of it to find what he needs, as he has uh, been able to just churn through the entire deck. All because he was able to opt for that on turn 2. And there we go. 4th Phoenix hits the graveyard. That represents lethal. Jacob knows it. He picks up the cards. Game 1 to Jake Conan here in the top 8.
Yeah, that, like you said, just a masterclass here. Now, as far as sideboards, what do we have what is Jacob working with here, Corbin?
Yeah, so looking at the sideboards here of mono green, obviously you're going to be a little constrained, but hey, we've got some colorless options here. Those stone brains, uh, the might and wellstone, but then some others, some green spells, some removal, right? Monstrous emergence. We got Elesh Norn, which is a card that has shown up in this mono green deck, but it can make white mana when it needs to for Elesh Norn. And Elesh Norn is pretty difficult, as it turns out, for a lot of decks to beat. So that is one of the important options over the course of this tournament. In this particular matchup, I think that you are looking for your graveyard hate, right? Of which I'm not sure that there's a ton of, but
Yeah,
how do you
there's
feel about that? I mean, do you go as deep as like the stone brain at this point to try to name
eh,
Phoenix? Where are we at with not a lot of clean graveyard hate here?
I don't know about that. That one might be a little too out there. Although I guess Stone Brain is maybe more reasonable on the play, where you can cast it and activate it before your opponent has an opportunity to get too many
Mhm.
phoenixes in play.
So we've
But
got
I think that one still
the
might be a
Keen-Eyed the Keen-Eyed is the Scavenging Ooze replacement in the mono green deck 'cause
yes.
it's got the double green. So obviously you're gonna pull those in. But
Mhm.
yeah, after that, I think it's, a little more open-ended.
Right. Yeah. Past the keen-eyed curators, I mean, you could consider scrap shooter because it does have the keyword reach, so it has
Mhm.
4 toughness and can block phoenixes. And it also does kill artist talent. So now that I think about it, that one is maybe more likely to come in because artist talent is such a huge part of
True.
Jake's plan. So the scrap shooters and the keen-eyeds. But other than that, I mean, I don't think you're gonna bring in these monstrous emergences. In the
No.
past, maybe you would have against previous versions of Phoenix that had, 4 copies of Ledger Shredder, but since those have mostly left the deck, there's not really a ton of good targets for emergence. So probably just the shooters and the Keen-Eye Curators.
All right, let's take a look over at Jake Conan's sideboard here. Is it Phoenix? You know what you're up against. It's mono green. So what's I'll say this is like somewhat interesting against the mono green deck. When you're sideboard, you obviously want removal. You need to remove their early creatures, but they have big spells, and sometimes those big spells are non-creature spells, right? So some amount of counter magic can be a consideration as well. What are you looking at here? For Jake Conan, who really honestly handled that first game pretty well. What does he want to tweak in the sideboard?
Yeah, I mean, he's got some options here, right? Like Brazen Borrower, I think is pretty good because that is one of the few ways that Jake has to remove Leyline of the Guild Pack from the
Right.
battlefield early. So I think you're maybe going to want to go towards those. A null doesn't really have any targets. Yeah, I don't think there's a single target for a null, so not going to want to go towards that. Torch the Tower, if you wanted more cheap kill spells for elves, could be kind of interesting. You mentioned the Negate could be kind of good because it
Mhm.
counters both Storm the Festival and Kiora. And then past that, what's nice from this, or what's nice for Jake about this matchup, is because both players have open deck lists. Jake knows
Right.
that Jacob does not really have a ton of graveyard hate. There's no ley lines, there's no rest in pieces, there's none of that stuff. Really, just the 2 keen-eyed curators, which his deck is very capable of killing. And you don't really have to go towards like the iconoclasts and the extra profs and all these kind of alternate plans. You can
Mhm.
kind of just stick with your plan A and know that it's probably going to be good enough.
Yeah, because even if he, worst case scenario, right? You have an early Phoenix and he's able to play a Key Knight and get it. Well, okay, fair enough. But you probably just kill the Key Knight after that and just wait for your next Phoenix, right? That's sort of the advantage you have as he is at Phoenix deck. I mean, it's the reason, the reason that it's been so good for so long is that it just has the ability to solve the game and inevitability, whether that's through the birds or the treasure cruise, or just the pure card selection of the deck, right? So, yeah, I think that Jake has got to feel pretty decent about his odds here, as long as he doesn't, get overrun by that turn one mana dork, turn two Kiora, turn three, massive spell. The thing I thought about though is if you're we watched Jake earlier bring in those iconoclasts and win the game off of them. They were very good. And we were looking at the monstrous emergences in the green sideboard, right? Is that something you think you fear out of the mono green deck, or do you think you just shove in my couple of keen eyes and kind of keep doing my thing?
I don't think you want to go towards the iconoclast because the one ones, I guess in theory, the one ones could potentially be used to pressure a Kiora early on. But as far as like the big combo turn,
Mhm.
the big kill spell here, I know that we don't have the Karn, the Great Creator anymore, so we're not going to go get I can't remember the name of the artifact, the thing that you played on the backside or what have you. So we don't have any of that stuff. But the kill condition now these days is Ulvenwald Oddity, which is an 8/8, or well, it's a 4 mana creature that you can flip over, and it gives all of your other creatures +1/+1 haste and trample. So you're not really going to be able to use the 1/1s to prevent like a big lethal swing. You could maybe chump block early. You can chump block stuff like Cavalier of Thorns. Old Growth Troll does have trample as well. So I don't know. I don't know if you want to go towards the Iconoclast, but I don't know. They could be interesting at pressuring Cure at least.
Yeah, it's also, again, like many things and many of these matchups, sort of a play like play draw. The kind of class would be much better on the play, etc. Um, Looks like we had one mulligan over there from Jacob, who's gonna keep this six, ship that one to the bottom. And here we go. We're off and running. Top eight
Mm.
play. Ley line on turn 0.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think Jacob in this matchup would rather have a turn 0 ley line than a turn 1 elf because,
Yeah.
99% of the time your elf is dying, but there's a lot less ways for Jake to remove the ley line from the battlefield. So I think this is kind of a sort of the perfect start and see if we can find the Nykthos here. This is going to be huge. What's that representing? 5 mana on turn 3? Yeah, there it
Very
is.
good.
And now for Jake, do we have we have 3 outs postboard. We have 1 Floodmaw and 2 Brazen Barber, and really wants to find one of those bounce spells here.
Yeah, he's threw that consider into that torch into the graveyard super quick.
2 mana. There it is.
Hey,
Yeah, that's
nice,
the Brazen Barber.
nice find. So, normally brazen borrower, when you petty theft something, you're just kind of buying time, etc. In this case, when you're bouncing a turn 0 ley line, you're actually gaining yourself +4 mana, or well +2, but you're costing them 4 mana in the exchange that they otherwise wouldn't have had to spend at all, and it made that Kiora much less devastating here. And here we go, talent start
So
things off for Jake on turn 3.
so what you're saying, Corbin, is that Jake cast 4 Stone Rains on turn 2. Is that what you're telling me?
Something like that, I would
Okay.
say. Yeah,
All
something
right.
like that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're in Jacob's spot, what do? You just replay the ley line? I mean, I guess if you have nothing better to do and you still have the Nykthos to follow up, maybe it's not completely unreasonable. He's going to go for
Yep.
Cavalier instead, which is still a pretty powerful play. That's going to get a card off of the Kiora and going to dig 4 deeper to try and find a copy of Nykthos, or 5 deeper rather, excuse me.
Yeah, even
Did we
with
miss?
the wow, okay.
Oh no.
I was gonna say, even with the petty theft on the ley line, it's still kind of rough for Conan here, right? Because it's still a ramped out Cavalier of Thorns. It's drawing cards. Now, I guess it didn't itself ramp any further, but I mean, it's still just a massive threat, and you've still got a very long way to go. And your opponent still has a Kiora, and so lots of mana is going to be available to Jacob on this turn.
Yeah, Tano does have a Nykthos in hand off of that he found off of the invasion. So
Right.
with the Nykthos presenting 5 devotion, that's going to be 2, turning 2 into 5. That's 7 mana plus the Cura untap down to
6.
5 plus 5 is 10.
And we'll see what he's able to do with it. That, of course, is the question. Do they have a payoff? Now the green deck is stuffed full of payoffs, and
Yeah,
Storm the Festival can come from the graveyard.
I
Petty
could
Theft
think of
number 2.
some things to do with 10 mana.
Yeah. Petty Theft number 2 here.
No, that's Picklock.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah. So we're freeing the Fae here, triggering the talent, discarding a arc like Phoenix, which we're then able to keep in the graveyard, is Jake when casts Treasure Cruise here. So this is a big turn for him, regardless of what he is staring down, whether or not it's enough. He is doing exactly what the Phoenix Dex wants to do. That said, there's looks like one bird right now coming back at the end of it, unless he was able to pick one up off of the cruise.
Yeah, and Jacob missing off of the Cavalier, Jake also missing on the Picklock Prankster. So both decks operating at peak efficiency. Really wants to try and find, I think maybe the best would be, I mean, I guess something like a Floodmaw to bounce the Cav, get the Phoenix back, and you could deal
And there you
3 to
go.
the Kiora. And what's nice about that, it
Ooh.
looks bad, right? Because you're giving Jacob another Cavalier trigger, but I didn't see the second Phoenix.
He
This is
was
way
able to
better.
discard.
Okay.
He must have drawn the Phoenix off of the cruise. He was then able to discard it to
Got it.
the talent, is able to bring it back and knock the Kiora down right away. What a huge swing there from Jake.
Yeah, because I only saw the first Phoenix, so I didn't realize we had a
Right.
backup one ready to go. So yeah, that's a huge turn because now you're basically sort of time walking Jacob, where you're making Jacob spend 5 more mana on Cavalier. That's his entire next turn. and doesn't get to untap with the Kiora, has a lot less devotion. So a lot of good things here for Jake. As I think we lost our feed. Not exactly sure what happened, but I don't know if you guys can hear us. We're gonna try and get you
I
back real quick.
All right, he
Corbin
does.
can.
Yeah, I think I've got it. So Jacob does go for the recast the Cavalier here, is able to find Sunken Citadel off of it, and does play out Nykthos. So fully devotion for mana next turn with 3 off the Cavalier, 1 off the Invasion. That gets him to 4. And now Jake's Phoenixes have a blocker to worry about as well. So he's going to start with Sleight of Hand, discard a talent.
Yeah, so 2 Phoenixes here for Jake. Jacob was able to redeploy the Cavalier of Thorns and see exactly where we can go from here. Now, we have gone through 2 bounce spells, right? We used the Floodmaw and the Barber, so there is only one left, one possible bounce spell left here for Jake. So see if he can maybe find that to, just continuously, just basically keep time walking Jacob over and over again. And how about a Profs? That's going to represent a lot of damage.
Well, yeah, and I guess you can get a Phoenix large enough to swing into the Cavalier with that way. But these bounce spells too for Jake have just done so much work when you consider, and there it is, number 2, the petty theft this time for real, hitting the Cavalier back. So Jacob has just spent 10 mana on that Cavalier to have it bounce twice, and now he is taking 9 in the air. This has been just a wildly impressive game by the Phoenix player, and that the Green Devotion player, usually when they spend this much mana, they win the game. But as it turns out, he's just had all this mana go not to waste, I suppose, but just been locked away in his hand after bounce after bounce. Now, the ley line has been redeployed here, and that Sunken Citadel means he can actually activate Nykthos because it can provide 2 mana for land abilities. So is able to, I guess, net some amount of mana, probably 3 mana off of that. And Jake's gonna read
I
this
think
one. We'll
that's
see.
Scrap Shooter.
Yes, it must be. It looks like
Okay.
a Bloomborough card. Second Nykthos comes down.
Right, so we made 5 off of the Nykthos. We used 3 to play the shooter with 2 floating, and now we're
Mhm.
playing a second Nykthos, which means we have 7 mana, right? 4, 5, 6, 7. So we calve down to 2 floating, and 2 floating means if he finds another Nykthos, we can use that. Looks like did not find another Nykthos.
Okay.
Um,
Well, this is, I mean, we just talked about how well it was playing out for Conan last turn, but this is the power of the mono green deck to come back. You're seeing Nykthos really do its thing here. But Sunken Citadel was a nice, quiet MVP of this turn, allowing it to continue. And at the end of this, Jacob's going to end with at least one blocker. I'm not sure that this is going to be enough, but was able to cobble together a really nice turn there by the end of it.
it seems as if that creature in play is Keen-Eyed
Keen-Eye
Curator.
Curator, okay.
So I've lost my license to be able to describe alt art cards anymore. We're going to leave that up to Mason because I'm apparently not good enough at that. But yeah, we have a looks like a cruise here. That's going to be 3. A lot of power here off the profs. Now remember, we've already gone through all the bounce spells. At least we know that,
Right.
right? And well, I guess everybody knows that because it is open deck list, and that's probably something that Jacob is keeping track of, right? How many bounce spells have you played? And oh, never mind. It's the barber in the main deck, right? There's 1 in the main and 2 in the board, so that was the last bounce spell, right?
Mhm.
Never mind.
And there we go. What a set of plays there from Jake, really, right? That was pretty nice all around. I can't say that you see the green deck spend 20 mana very often and just lose the game in a really decisive way, not be able to do anything about it. So that was what we saw in that first one. That one, sorry, excuse me. Uh, that one was really nicely done. All right, so we have more magic for you here from the top 8. And that means we're heading to the backup. Now, remember, this was a big Rakdos top 8, and we brought you the non-Rakdos matchup first. Here is the more interesting of those Rakdos matchups. You have Charlie Dusterberg on the right playing Transmogrify, and of course, Unholy Annex, because everyone's playing it this week. Daryl Ayers on your left playing Rakdos Demons, but actually Spot, I believe, a Cruxa in the graveyard over there was his turn to play this time.
I mean, you wouldn't look at like if you came in to this battlefield and you saw a Bankbuster and an Unholy Annex, you would think this is just a Rakdos Demons mirror match. So, yeah, interesting that Charlie has sort of adopted a lot of the things that you would see in a Rakdos mid range deck, but kind of mixing that into the Transmogrify deck. This matchup is interesting because the card Transmogrify is sort of difficult to resolve against a deck that has Fatal Push and Torch the Tower and some other one mana kill spells. So I think this is going to be, a situation where Charlie in the post board games can lean more on the sort of fair plan with Annex and Bankbuster and kind of try to go toe to toe with the Demons card on Daryl's sides.
Of course, the top end of the Transmogrify, when you destroy your own creature and go get a creature card from the top of your deck, is Atraxa, as it is in basically every deck across Magic these days. As the reload, the smattering of keywords on that card, is generally just too much value to overcome for opponents. Daryl, though, is, he's playing it real, Rakdos close to the vest, the Shieldred, the classic. I play this and it's just going to drain you. And double Mutavaults also for Daryl. So one Mutavault for Charlie. So two Mutavaults actually for Charlie. So a lot of aggression in the mana bases, but also some combo in the mana bases if you're Charlie.
Yeah.
Transmogrify resolving on his Mutavault.
Yeah, I mean, you see a treasure up here for Daryl, but does not have that one mana kill spell. No Fatal Push, no Torch the Tower. That is going to be a resolve the Traxa. And it's a situation where, I mean, you look at this battlefield and you see that, Daryl has a Shieldred and Charlie has an Annex.
Mm-hmm.
That heavily favors Daryl if the game goes, longer to an extent. So Charlie just says, you know what? I ain't got nothing going on. I got a jam and just did make you have it. And Daryl did not have it.
Yeah, it was just that one treasure token needed a particular set of removal spells. Didn't have it. Atraxa hits the board now, and Charlie is just going to be heavily, heavily advantaged from this point. Because regardless of what happens to Atraxa, that's a bunch of cards. Now, obviously, if you're able to get a hit in with Atraxa and gain life, that would go a long way here.
Yeah, and I think we might even see Charlie like if Daryl doesn't have some sort of kill spell, it just says offer up the Shieldred trade for Atraxa. I think we might even see Charlie just chump block with the Bankbuster because maybe doesn't want to trade with the Atraxa, but at least has plenty of options available. I believe that looks like a Thoughtseize, a Bankbuster, and a Fable pulled up to the front. And then I think the instance we're looking at is either Fatal Push or Withering Torment, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the lands, yeah.
Pretty decent Atraxa pile, I would say.
Not bad. Not a bad draw 5.
And your opponent doesn't have a 1 mana removal spell, or they would have used it to prevent that Transmogrify. So the number of cards they could actually have that prevent you from connecting with Atraxa and getting the 7 life, you do need when you're sitting here at 9 and staring down Shieldred. You do feel decent about your odds there, though, if you're Charlie.
Right. Yeah. Charlie, unfortunately for Charlie, did not have an extra mana to animate the Mutavault in the end step to be able to, not have to lose 2 life off the Annex. But now Daryl flipping Fable, that could mean something. And we'll have to see exactly, what Daryl's got going on here.
He seems to have a plan. We're not, every time. They're getting me every time, man.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Daryl's deck list, we have 2 Go for the Throat as far as cards that can kill Atraxa.
Yeah.
2 Go for the Throat, and then in the sideboard there are looks like 2 Invoke Despairs. But that one wouldn't really work here because you could just crew the Bankbuster in response and then sack the Bankbuster.
Yeah, Daryl went digging there, sacrifices the blood token to go 1 card deeper. Doesn't seem to have found The immediate answer is now going to have to think it through. Okay. Shocking in a land to save the treasure token for later. Plays a fear of missing out. Dig one card deeper. And move to combat does offer up that Shieldred trade that you mentioned.
Yeah, big question here for Charlie. Do you take the trade? Now, we know the 5 cards that Charlie got off of the Atraxa there. I think maybe Charlie is interested in just trading because he values the life.
Right.
Well, no, I guess yeah, you could just attack
Well,
with it and gain the
if
life.
he,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, uh, if he does trade, he goes up to 16, but then you're not in imminent danger of dying. Your opponent's low on cards, and you have all the cards you just drew. But it looks like
Yeah, I like the
instead it was
chump
the
block.
Bankbuster.
I think it makes sense because, obviously if Daryl had a way to kill the Atraxa, he would have done it this turn. So you
Exactly.
figure your Atraxa is good to go. You might as well just, chump block with the Bank Buster and then, you have a way to kill the Shieldred and then you can kind of go from there.
Yes, exactly. And Daryl went digging pre-combat, so Charlie knew basically that the way should be clear anyway.
Because Charlie did take the Torment off of the Atraxa, not the push, right? I can't remember. I know he was deciding between push and Torment. I can't remember which one he took. I thought it was the Torment.
He's got a full grip of cards here, down to 7 life from the draw step, the Shieldred trigger. All right, and there we go. The Atraxa does connect as expected, and Charlie just says, I'll get that out of the way. First thing, I'll go back up in life here. And
We're
then
not at 7
remember,
anymore.
yeah, there will also be, if Shieldred's able to leave, you can also then gain more life in the end step with the
Hmm.
Mutavault and the Annex. So a lot of considerations here for Charlie.
Charlie in the tank here. I wonder what we're thinking about. Maybe we're thinking about potentially making a 6/6 demon. I think we want to try and get the Shieldred off the battlefield as quick as possible. Okay.
Yeah, I also think the life totals. Charlie should be at 14 after that Atraxa hit.
Yeah. Right? Because Charlie went from 7 to 14.
Yeah,
And Daryl went from 16 to 9. So I think we just have life totals flopped.
yeah. There we go.
Yeah. And then Charlie stays at 14 because we gain 2 off of the Shieldred, or we gain 2 off of the Annex and lose 2 off the Shieldred. And that was a Fuel the Flames, Corbin.
Yeah, well,
3
if you
mana
I won't put it
Evil
on the
Sweeper.
screen for
Yeah.
anyone not familiar with that because that was a big swing here.
Well, it's
Clear
kind of
a lot.
awkward because you had to lose your own Mutavault to do it, right? Because you
Yeah.
had to animate the Mutavault in the end step and then, I think drew the Fuel the Flames off of it and then decided to cast it
Well, you
again.
just kind of fade. If you can fade, that Daryl couldn't remove Atraxa last turn.
Yeah.
Daryl is at 7 life. So if you can just fade the top of the deck here, I guess, he might have gone up actually from the Shieldred. Not positive on
No, I
our
think
exact
he I
life
think he
totals
actually
here.
stayed at 7 because he was at 14, took 7 from the Atraxa. The Annex put him down to 5 and then
Yeah.
gained 2 on the draw step to go back to 7, I
There we
believe.
go. Yes. So he is at 7, which means he is facing down lethal from Atraxa. And if he doesn't have a way to either draw a card to gain life or get rid of Atraxa, he's just going to lose. And if you're Charlie, you know that was a line you could take because he didn't remove Atraxa last turn. And that's why
Right.
we see him just take this hit from Shieldred and fall down to 10. You feel pretty okay doing that if you're Charlie.
All right, we're lining up some mana. Looks like a
A
Croxa.
Croxa escape.
Okay. And I'm assuming we have life totals right there. I'm guessing Daryl's at 7. We may have missed a Shielder trigger somewhere in the mix, so it's possible Daryl's at 9, but I can't
Yeah, I think,
recall.
yeah. And Charlie should be down to
And
he just played
also,
a Thoughtseize, so it should be at 10.
even if Daryl was at 9, you could just attack with the Traxa, play land, and make a demon.
Oh, it does look like that might have been the case. So there
We
is the
may also.
land.
We may have life totals
Yep, there
100%
is the
wrong.
land, there is the demon, there is the incept, there's the trigger, and there is the win. Charlie Dusterberg moving on to the semifinals here with Rakdos Transmogrify. Really, I think well deduced by him that, hey, I need to go for the Atraxa play here, and then to figure out that I can keep this Atraxa around, and I don't need to worry about this trade. Well done by him there, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just a very, very well played game by both players, and congratulations to Charlie.
Yeah. All right. And well, that wraps up our top 8 here in Madison. And that means on the other side of a break, we are heading in to our top 4. So stick with me here, Corbin Hostler, Devin Dumwick O'Donnell. We'll see you on the other side for some top 4 Pioneer action.